Welcome back to another thrilling episode of the Wild Edible World podcast. I'm but one of your hosts. My name is Michael.
And I am Steve. We have a special treat for you once again this week, and we are here with Mr. Clay Bowers, wild food and natural navigation enthusiast.
Professional forager extraordinaire up in Michigan, based out of Traverse City. His website is nomiforager.com, and that's where you're going to find all of his great class schedules. He has one coming up. Probably by the time this episode comes out, it'll be right a few days right before this class, but we're really excited to have Clay on to talk about Chaga.
Yeah, and you can find Clay on Instagram at Clay_Bowers, and you should look him up right now, and you can check out his stuff while we're talking.
So thanks for coming to the show, Clay.
Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say one thing really quickly. Unfortunately, I accidentally made Clay 2_ Bowers.
Oh, got it.
I don't know how I did that, but I somehow managed to put 2 in there.
That's kind of cool. Unique.
Yeah. Important distinction, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
So you guys want to talk about Chaga?
Yeah, we'd love to talk about Chaga. It's something that I've never harvested. I don't think I've even ever seen in the Chicago area. Plenty of people think they've seen it.
Yeah, but we might have been fooled by burls.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know?
It happens a lot, right?
Yeah, that's a very common thing for people to do. Do you guys have many birches down there in
We
Chicago?
have a few, yeah.
A couple. We don't really have any like super strong stands or copses.
Or like old growth, nothing.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, a lot of them are pretty young.
Well, old growth and birch are kind of like a funny word combination there because birch trees only live to be about 80 years old.
Okay.
80 or 90, I think. Maybe a little bit older max, but that's generally their lifespan is regarded as like 80 years.
Pretty young.
Yeah, so pretty young, and they also are pioneer species, so they benefit from a lot of sunlight. They don't really do well in competition with other trees.
Okay.
And as I'm sure you guys know, because you're into mushrooms, they're also host to a couple other cool fungus species that humans also use. So like the birch polypore, for instance.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
And then Fomes fomentarius, that's the horsehoof mushroom.
Is that also what is that used for?
It's also called tinder fungus. That
Yeah.
was one that the Otzi the Iceman, or Otzi, I don't know how you say his name. He carried that around with him. They found it on his dehydrated body in the Alps. They found that mushroom on him, and apparently he was probably. They theorized either carrying coals in it or using it for parasites because it rids the body of whipworm.
Oh, wow.
Mhm.
So, I mean, and they were able to, derive all that just from finding it on his dried corpse. That's, I love that story. It's like one of the oldest preserved human bodies ever, right?
Yep. And some skier just found it in the 1990s.
Wow. So relatively recent, too.
I can't imagine finding
Yep.
that, like skiing.
You're just skiing around, all of a sudden you find this, like, oh, somebody died here, and then it turns out it's like 5,000 years old.
One of the most important archaeological discoveries or paleontological, whatever.
We know what you mean.
Yeah. Let's move back to Chaga, though. So you can find it's exclusively on birch trees, right?
Yeah, so here's the thing is like Inonotus obliquus, the scientific name, that is a fungus that in of itself can grow on other things, right? But when we say chaga, a chaga is a separate reference from Inonotus obliquus. So like chaga is a reference to what you find growing on a birch tree. If you find something growing on a cherry tree, that would be the species like Inonotus obliquus. And this has been documented, right? But the problem is that half the medicine that people get from chaga is actually chemistry found in birch trees. So you got like betulinic acid and betulinin and stuff like that.
Cool.
Wow, so it's actually rendering medicinal components of the tree usable?
Yes. So, well, birch is already medicinal on its own But then that's why I say like chaga, the word chaga means, it does mean that species, but if you said chaga and then you harvested it from a different tree species, which is actually pretty rare to find, you would not be getting the same medicinal benefits that you would be getting if you found it on a birch tree, which is why I say, in my mind, chaga is not chaga unless it's found on a birch.
Okay, that makes sense. So what other, like, how would you use this as whenever you, well, okay, let's start from how would you harvest it? So you've found it. How long does it usually take to mature? Can you find like small pieces of it and then like come back later and it's going to be bigger? Is that going to take years?
Yeah, so chaga, first of all, is like a parasitic infection that gets into a birch tree, usually through a wound in the tree. We have strikingly little information about like how they sporulate and they make their spores, but one thing is certain, and that is that so chaga, the thing that you harvest, doesn't make spores. So there's only been a couple times in history when it's actually been photographed, like the actual mushrooms that spread the spores. So chaga grows from tiny infections in trees. We know that. We also know that before a protuberance grows out of the tree, that the tree has already probably likely been infected for 20, 30 years even sometimes.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so like you seeing chaga in an area typically means that there's going to be a lot more trees that are already infected. You just haven't seen the growth yet. I mean, in many ways, chaga growth actually kind of like mirrors cancerous growth in humans, in that like a lot of times people will have cancer, years before they actually get the
like symptomatic
like
and like.
Yep.
Yeah. Wow. And 30 years. That's up to like a third of this tree's life potentially. Like wow.
Yep. And then what chaga basically does is it'll have that sclerotium. That's what they're called. It'll start to grow out of the tree, and then they're pretty small at first. They could be, you could maybe make a fist shape. They could be that small. I've even found smaller, and then they can also just be as big as like a basketball. Where I've seen like, literally like a basketball size shape coming off of a tree.
That's wild.
And as long as you don't dig like into the tree tissue itself and you just kind of like knock off some pieces off the side, then it will start to regrow. And I've seen, we basically have like made the rounds here for the last 10 years. I know where there's all kinds of trees that grow chaga. And, every 4 years I'll go back to that tree or whatever if I want to harvest some, and I'll pick some off that tree, and it'll have regrown a substantial amount.
Wow. And is it every 4 years? Because that's generally how long it takes you to use what you collect?
No.
That's just the time you give the tree to regrow?
Yeah, it's just a random number that I've created for myself. I don't think that it makes any difference really. And as far as like the sustainability goes, there's a lot of stuff in the mycology world about chaga that is just flat out false. And, like I already mentioned prior, these sclerotium, they don't make spores. So like leaving some behind doesn't help anything. It literally does nothing. I would actually argue that leaving some behind is good just for your fellow foragers.
Sure.
And so like, I guess that's an important distinction for me, because like, I kind of detest seeing like misinformation for the wrong reason. Like you see all these people mentioning, oh, like you shouldn't harvest too much chaga because like it's rare. And I say it's not rare. And if you have enough, just take enough for yourself and then leave some behind so that other foragers have a chance to get it.
Yeah, which is kind of a general rule of thumb for like, I think all collection practice is just kind of, depending, it's not absolute, but most like native respecting stuff, we want to kind of collect a responsible amount, a personal use amount, and then leave enough for the rest, then and the animals around you too, because I'm sure there's other interactions that we don't understand yet that chaga have with like insects that may interact with it. Probably antiviral actions there too for them. So there's lots of benefits to leading a little bit behind, and I totally respect the fight against misinformation, doing the right thing for the wrong reason. It's like, well, that's not enough quite.
Yeah, we're all about that, and in fact, we've misspoke in past episodes of our podcast and gone back and recanted our information just to to be clear.
Sure, we're all learning together, I think. So.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but as far as like the rarity of chaga though too, that's like been one of the most infuriating things for me because so I live in Traverse City, which is like home to a lot of mushroom hunters. Right?
Yeah.
There are a ton of people up here who are into mushrooms. And chaga is heavily picked around here. And I can literally go in town and find chaga, like at some of our in-town parks.
Oh, man.
So that's why I say, like, depending on where you are, you're going to find chaga. I mean, we go... Typically, like if we're going to go pick chaga and we want to actually make like an event out of it and pick like a 5-gallon bucket or something, we're going to go to the Upper Peninsula because the Upper Peninsula of Michigan has vast stretches of birch forest. And, you can go out for 2 or 3 hours and fill up a 5-gallon bucket.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. And it's all...
And what I was going to say is also that's like, not even harvesting the stuff that's out of reach. That's only harvesting the things that you can reach with your, without a ladder.
Yeah, because birch are pretty tall. They're like thin and they grow fast. They don't live very long. So they're I mean, is a lot of the chaga pretty up high?
There's a substantial amount of chaga that is high up. Like it actually becomes kind of frustrating sometimes because you'll be walking through a birch forest and you look up and 30 feet up, there's like a basketball-sized chaga, and you're like, well, can't get that.
Torturous. Wow.
But that does make sense, like longitudinally. Just researching chaga a little bit before we came on here, a lot of the world's exports of chaga come from like Russia, Estonia, like that high latitude, cold weather area. So yeah, that makes sense, right? Michigan's up there too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. And in fact, I would say that I find less chaga the more south I go in Michigan. So
yeah.
It totally makes sense. And, I was having this discussion with Sam Thayer recently on a post that I made about chaga. And funny enough, he referred to it as the chaga police. Because like people say, they have this silly thing, like, I don't know how long you guys have been foraging, but I've been foraging for close to 17, 18 years. I've been teaching for about 12. And there's a thing that people do where if they don't find it around them, then they consider it to be a rare thing to find.
Absolutely.
Right.
1,000%.
So like so like there's a couple like really glaring examples of that I come across every single year, and they're ramps, chaga, and ghost pipe.
Yep.
Or Indian pipe.
Yep.
All three of those things are really, really, really common by me. But in fact, in the summer, I could walk across like whole entire expanses of ghost pipe, and just like I could probably harvest like hundreds and thousands of them.
Oh wow.
But I don't ever touch them because like I don't use them.
Mm-hmm, sure.
But if I wanted to, I could do so sustainably. But my sustainable harvest here might be different from somebody's sustainable harvest in downtown Chicago.
Oh, that's absolutely the case. That's why we advocate like just kind of general mindfulness, being mindful of its density in your area. And I was basically choking myself over here with the vein coming out of my forehead, trying not to bring up ramps while you're talking about like how people talk about chaga, because you're absolutely right. But I think it's also arguable that just because it's common around us doesn't mean it's not uncommon or generally considered mildly rare or something like that. It's just because it's super available to you doesn't mean it isn't, like, a lot of other places where people are really passionate about foraging, and it is really strong medicinal or delicious food, it isn't available, or it does need to be harvested really sustainably or mindfully, such as like the hills of Pennsylvania or whatever, where their ramp crops are being decimated. So it is just kind of like familiarity with place and, making sure that your environment as well as you can before you start harvesting freely. And so I really respect your mindfulness practice as well, because, around us, there's tons of ramps too.
We have so much. I feel like we live in like a ramp mecca.
Yeah.
And so when people are, tiptoe around the topic, it's a little bit, it's a little bit different for us. I think.
Yeah.
We're all fighting a good fight
actually,
out here.
From where I'm sitting right now, I can walk about a 3-minute walk to a woods that is about 5 acres. There's a 5-acre chunk we have access to that's pure 100% understory of ramps.
Wow.
And it grows every year with our harvest, which is why, I did a whole entire podcast on wild fed talking about this, but so I don't need to like rehash it or whatever. But they're like what you said is absolutely correct. Like it just depends on the area. When I teach classes every year in Southern Michigan, I do typically a Grand Rapids class and an Ann Arbor class every year. And there's like 10 ramps in each of those forests.
Yeah.
and I'll tell people, just don't harvest these. These are for looking at,
Yep. Or nibble.
Yeah.
Or a nibble, or yeah, but like Grand Rapids, you got a population of like maybe like 1 million or more people. I don't know the population of Grand Rapids, but like everybody having a nibble would be like too much.
Yeah,
nibbling.
yeah.
Very good point. Very good point.
So anyway, but as in regards to chaga though, what I'm saying though is like, if you harvest chaga, even if you're in a city of 1 million people, that's not an unsustainable harvest. It's an unsustainable harvest in that other people won't have the opportunity, but it's not unsustainable in that it's not going to do any damage to the tree, the specimen, the organism, anything like that.
Wonderful distinction. Yeah, thank you. Oh, hey, Steve.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Well, what's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just got this new water bottle, but it just looks so plain.
Well, have I got the store for you. Introducing the Wild Edible World Podcast Merch Store.
Wowie wow!
It's the merch store where you can get all of your favorite podcasts merch for all your decorating purposes.
How do I find that?
Go to wildedibleworldpod.shopify.com or go to any of our Instagram and media accounts and view the link in the bio.
Wowie wow!
So whenever you do harvest your chaga, you got a 5-gallon bucket full. What are we doing with it?
Immediately, it must be dried. So that means you have to break it into little tiny chunks. Usually we do that with a big hefty cutting board and a hammer and a chisel.
Okay.
Break it into little chunks. And then that needs to be dried, because believe it or not, you're looking at this thing that looks like wood, and if you just kind of like left it in a basket or a bucket it would all start to mold within a matter of a couple days. So it has to be taken care of. And then at that point, once it's dried into little tiny chunks, what we do to get better extraction and get more out of our chaga is we use a Vitamix to powder it.
Nice. Do you do any sort of like alcohol extraction or anything after it's powdered, or do you use it for tea? What's your favorite?
Well, I honestly, and this is this is going to be like the weirdest thing. If you read this blog that I wrote a couple years ago, it's called Myths and Legends Chaga. I actually talk about how like chaga is not the cure-all that people kind of think it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think like one of the biggest things about chaga is that everybody's like, is it sustainable or is it not sustainable? But I think the real argument is like, is it actually this like savior medicinal that we've all made it out to be? And I do think that it is. There is some like scientific research. If you were to go to Google Scholar and look it up, there's a lot of headlines in there that you could just glaze through that would talk about the anti-tumor effects or the like beneficial aspects to your liver. But also, you know, chaga is like one of the highest things that has oxalates in the country or in the world.
Oh wow.
It's really high in oxalates. So unless you have a lot of like gut bacteria that does away with oxalates, which we know is a thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like then
Sure.
if you're sensitive to oxalates, then chaga is not the right choice for you.
I've never heard that noted before, how dense it is with oxalates.
Yeah, I've never heard that either. That's fascinating for sure.
There is at least one study of a woman, and I believe don't quote me on this, but I believe she was Japanese, and she had complete like renal failure, and after a year of using chaga all the time. But I think she was kind of going crazy. It's like when you hear about somebody who develops like a big goiter because they eat like, you know, pounds of kale a day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure.
So it's like that moderation thing is important. And then, but as far as like what we do, we just powder it and then drink tea. I don't do alcohol extraction. My girlfriend runs a tea business called Bloom Wildcraft, and she
cool.
sells a blend called Hot Chaga. It used to be called Hot Chagalit. But everybody kept calling it hot chocolate, and she was so like everybody kept mispronouncing it, so she just decided to rename it Hot Chaga. And Hot Chaga is exactly what it sounds like. It's a hot chocolate mix that has chaga powder in it.
Okay, cool. Wow.
Yeah.
And so what kind of flavors is it in, like viewing into your teas and your
what does
hot
it taste
chocolate?
like? If you're just like straight up chaga, how would you describe it?
Straight up chaga, I would describe as like a more like bitter coffee taste that's kind of got hints of vanilla.
Oh.
And it is like it doesn't have like are you guys coffee drinkers?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're drinking coffee. I think we're both drinking
Yeah.
coffee right now.
Yeah, as am I. I love coffee. I'm like a little obsessed with coffee.
Me too.
But like coffee it's got like that thicker kind of like mouth feel. That's like a funny saying, but chaga does not. Chaga is like a little bit more watery. So I would say that it doesn't have that like thickness that you kind of feel from coffee, but it is very flavorful in that it has like, you know, it has those hints of vanilla. It has that like bold, bitter kind of coffee taste to it. But anytime somebody suggests that chaga could be like a coffee substitute, I'm like, get out of here.
Yeah,
we are team stop substituting things for coffee.
Yeah.
And I think
stop
maybe
calling it coffee.
I think maybe like every other podcast that we record, every other ingredient, they're like, oh well, you can grind up the seeds and use them for coffee or dandelion root coffee, and it's
roast
like,
it.
Please don't talk that way about my dear coffee.
Yeah. It's like, call it dandelion root tea or roasted root tea or something like that. It's not coffee. Like stop.
No, exactly. Coffee is Coffee's coffee.
That's
You
right.
know, that's like when people, it's the same thing with potatoes. You know, Jerusalem artichokes are not like potatoes.
No. Oh my God.
Roasting beets does not give them the texture of potatoes. I love or radishes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love radishes, but
Yeah.
they're not potatoes.
No, and I love roasted radishes, but
Yeah.
it doesn't. It's not fluffy and soft. Yeah, absurd.
Yeah.
The compensations people will try to make to
Mhm.
avoid certain food.
Yeah. Yep. So, but chaga is it's really good. I mean, I like the taste of it, but as far as like my day-to-day practice goes, it's like I'm not like a huge chaga drinker. I drink it like maybe a few times a month.
And I think that's plenty. I think it's a little bit from each area kind of helps out, right? Like you don't want to, like you said, the woman that ate kale for how many days ended up with renal failure. Like you don't want to. You can overdo a good thing. There is such thing as too much of a good thing.
Yep, exactly.
So, do you
Um,
go all in on the chaga flavor? Do you add any sweetener or anything?
I typically do. I I usually like to add in little maple sugar.
Ooh.
There we
You know,
go. You guys process your own syrup and sugar and everything?
yeah, and actually we make most of it into sugar, just
Oh,
because it's like a little bit. It's easier to store. We have started to make a little more of it into syrup because like my kids just enjoy, like when we make pancakes, they really want to put like syrup on it and not like sprinkle sugar on top, which to me is like the same thing, but for my kids they just want to have that, they just want to have that liquid,
yep,
you know.
yep, yep.
So we make maple sugar mostly, and then we'll do, you know, a little bit with syrup.
You know, I've seen some people already tapping trees.
Really?
I swear,
Hmm.
blows my
Yeah,
mind.
my friend Michael Mondo down in Bay City. That's like a couple hours south of us, southeast.
You're kidding me? In
He just had a,
Michigan?
yeah, he had a tree tapped like a week and a half ago. We've had like the weirdest winter.
It is a weird
It,
winter.
yeah, facts.
I was talking
Here in
to.
Chicago too.
We got invited. I haven't told you about this yet, but we got invited to a town or a cabin in Stockton, Illinois, to go morel hunting in mid to late April.
Hell yeah.
And so we were talking about the strange winter it's been and how it might be more of a mid-April thing.
Yeah, perhaps. I
Huh.
don't know. Let's close out with the Chaga though. Let's see. Is there anything else? I mean, it probably smells about how it tastes, right? Is there any difference in its like
Just earthy.
aroma?
No, I don't think so. But I would just say that if you're looking for chaga, if you want some like general tips on finding it, I would
Mhm.
say number one thing is always do a complete circle around the tree. So, you know, and I'm sure you guys know this if you're looking for mushrooms too. Like you really want to look everywhere, especially if you're looking for like a mushroom that's growing on a tree. Chaga is not a mushroom. I should state that. It's a, in case I haven't
It's a
stated that already.
sterile canker.
Yeah, it's I actually love the name Clinker Canker.
Yeah.
That's just a funny name. But we, you know, if you go out, do a complete circle around the tree. It's tedious, but you'll find more that way. Another thing that I always recommend people do is go to a place that has a lot of birch trees. So if you're looking in a place that's got like 3 or 4 birch trees, you're obviously going to find low densities of chaga.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're in a place like where I'll be teaching my class next weekend, that's going to be, you know, I don't know, 30% of the trees are birch trees.
Oh wow.
So like you're going to have a way higher likelihood of finding chaga rather than like, it's like, you know, I wouldn't go around here looking for prickly pear cactus. Like it is a native species to Michigan, but it's so like rare that I'd be like, I'd end up disappointing myself.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, and I think a lot of people they just there's a lot of regionality to consider when you go foraging, and a lot of people don't realize how restrictive kind of the habitable zone for chaga is. And like you said, it's specifically on birch trees. So if you don't have any birch trees, you don't got any chaga, folks.
Yeah. And I would just say too, like, ordering it from Siberia, while that is not great for the environment and all the shipping and everything, if you're worried about conservation of our forests and people taking too much, like, you can support Siberian harvesters if you so desire, because they have forests there that are 100% birch.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, so it's like dirt to them, like it's everywhere.
They actually, they almost like worship it. Not literally, but like they, the like Siberia, Russians, Estonia, like I mentioned before, are big believers in its anti-cancer properties, and they've done studies. I'm sure it's mostly anecdotal, but they love it up there, man.
Wow.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I just think that it's a really cool. And if you guys do get a chance to get some, take a little chunk and burn it. It's really interesting, like incense smell.
That's
okay,
awesome.
I promise.
Yeah. So now we have two incense. What was the last one with J.B. Douglas?
Oh, that was sweet gum.
Sweet gum, yeah, sweet gum incense, and now chaga incense.
Yeah.
Very cool.
What part of the sweet gum?
The balls.
Oh, really? You can burn the little balls, huh?
Yeah.
I know. We were amazed too.
It's like I stepped on those so many times.
Those are pretty rare around us, but I know they're more common as you get more south.
Yeah, where I grew up in central Illinois, I think I had one in my backyard. So
nice.
I'm very familiar with the tree, but I think unless you have any other helpful tips, any secrets about chaga?
Oh, here's a good tip. If you're in the woods, use a chisel to break the stuff off. A hammer and a chisel. It's the best way.
There we go. Perfect. All right.
And don't go into the tree. So, even if you're seeing like a huge chunk and you're getting all greedy, just temper yourself and just take enough so that it's definitely going to grow back. And watch out for the burls, because those things are really like they fool you. You'll run. You see a big black spot on a tree and you get all excited and you run there and it's a burl.
And you can be sure you're not digging into the tree because it grows at a surface level, or does it grow from within the tree a little bit? So you just make sure you stay on the outside of the tree. Is that all?
Yeah, I like to stay on the outside of the tree, and it does grow into the tree a little bit, so you can be forgiven there to like go a tiny bit into the tree. But what you're looking for is that orange gold color.
Mm-hmm.
If you start hitting actual wood, you'll notice the textural difference and the coloration.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah,
I think that'll be pretty easy.
Yeah, and it's a really fun thing to do, because if you're harvesting, I mean, it can be harvested at any time of the year. There's a lot of myths about like how you're not supposed to harvest it any other time but winter. That's not true, but it is. We reserve it for the winter months solely because it is like there's nothing else to harvest.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to get outside, get everybody moving, and collect something. Yeah, I love that.
Yep. But anyway, I really hope you guys get out there and find some chaga.
Yeah, it's unlikely in the Chicago area, but
we're gonna try anyway. Damn it!
Yeah, and we're gonna make our way up to Michigan eventually too. Sometimes. So.
Yeah, we're planning a little Michigan tour. Record a bunch of podcasts and see your neck of the woods, man.
Yeah, man. We got to meet in person.
Cool. Well, we will be meeting in person at apparently you're going to be teaching at the Great Lakes Foragers Gathering.
Yep, that is correct. Yep, we'll meet then at the very least, so that'll be fun. And then we'll finally have the triangle between me, you, and publicly challenged Luke. It'll be connected.
I'm actually going with Luke down to Texas to hunt pigs in March.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm pretty excited about that.
You know, we'll have to do this again soon because I was like going through your Instagram and your videos and whatnot, and I am a novice to hunting. I'm just getting into it, but I saw that you were out hunting squirrels, and I am just in need of knowledge. So I'll probably hit you up.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, squirrels are really fun to hunt, but we don't have any this year because we had 0 mast crop anywhere, the whole area.
Oh, no mast. Yeah.
Yeah, so we had like a great squirrel migration out of here. They're like, there's almost no squirrels here this year. It's the most bizarre thing.
That's hilarious.
Well, have you never heard of a great squirrel migration?
No.
No, that's new to us.
We are swimming in squirrels over here all the time.
Yeah, so if you read about the Lewis and Clark expedition, that's the first mention of it. They came across, I think it was thousands and thousands of squirrels swimming across the Ohio River, and it's a phenomenon known as a great squirrel migration, and it happens when there's no mast crop. So if there's no food for them to eat, they'll actually go like hundreds of miles sometimes to find.
This is fascinating.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So
that's fucking awesome.
I feel like you've just opened up so many doors of research for me.
That's a squirrel hole I think I'll go down.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, good luck.
Thank you
anyway,
so much.
I really appreciate you guys.
All right. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, we appreciate you too, man. Thanks for being on the show, sharing all this really valuable information with us and our listeners. Make sure everybody checks out his Instagram page. That's Clay2_Bowers.
That's right.
And check out his website, nomiforager.com. And yeah, we loved having you on, Clay. Can't wait to talk to you again.
All right. Thank you.
We'll see you. So that was Clay.
What
rules,
a guy.
Man.
Yeah, man. A fountain of knowledge.
Yeah, super knowledgeable guy. Been doing it for forever. He definitely makes the rounds all the way around Michigan. And from what I remember, I think last year he was even like making his way into Indiana, teaching some classes there too. Yeah, I don't think he's taught any classes in Chicago necessarily. Not stepping on my turf, but no, I'd be happy to have him out here, man.
Oh man, we'd love to host him.
Yeah.
Man, what a guy.
Yeah, that was really fun. I loved learning about Chaga. Never used it, never seen it.
I've had it in like the coffee that I brought you today. There's one with Chaga. There's a not that. Not in that.
Yeah,
I have others.
A different
one. Yeah, man, that was great.
Yep.
And you gotta think that if someone as popular as like Daniel Vitalis, to name drop, follows you, you gotta be doing something right.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's I think Clay's getting a lot of long deserved recognition. So yeah.
So follow that guy.
We're gonna keep the train rolling. Yeah.
Yeah.
The follow train. Keep running. That's the Wild Edible World podcast. Thanks for listening,
guys.
Been a blast. We love you.
Sigh.
What's wrong, buddy?
Well, I just realized this mushroom supplement I bought isn't actually made with mushrooms. It's made with something called myceliated grain?
Myceliated grain?
Oh, no!
I'm sorry to tell you, buddy, but myceliated grain is a sure sign of a poor quality mushroom supplement.
Well, dang. I wanted mushrooms, not brown rice. What should I do?
Well, you should support a small batch producer from right here in the Midwest. Keweenaw Apothecary.
Keweenaw Apothecary? Tell me more.
Keweenaw Apothecary specializes in high-quality mushroom extracts from Michigan, and they always use real mushrooms, never myceliated grain.
That sounds like exactly what I've been looking for. Where can I order?
Well, you can find them at keweenawapothecary.etsy.com. That's KEWEENAW apothecary.etsy.com. Be sure to read their many excellent reviews.
Thanks, buddy. I don't want no low-quality mushroom products from a factory. I want Keweenaw Apothecary.
Wowie wow!